when it comes to certain iconic vehicles, the phrase "don't mess with success" is pretty well spoken and I think makes a lot of sense. The Jeep Wrangler is one of those vehicles where enthusiasts don't really want Jeep to mess with it too much because they don't want it to lose the magic of what made it so good in the first place. This is Out Motorsports, the channel for cars as you are. My name is Jake and I'm here with the 2024 Jeep Wrangler 4xe. Jeep has made some changes to the 2024 Wrangler in general, not just the 4xe, and I want to talk about what they are because Jeep's trying to keep this thing relevant just for the sake of being relevant, but also against its key competitor, the Ford Bronco. And they've also made some changes to the Willys Trim, which this one is, and they've made a change to the 4xe that makes it even better than it was before. So I want to talk about what's new for the 2024 Wrangler, and then of course we'll get this one on the road and talk about how it is to drive. I'm not off-roading it because plenty of people have already said how great the 4xes are off-road, but I do want to talk about how this is in a city environment because I think that is where a lot of 4xes are going to find homes, and I think they are excellent for it. So first, let's talk about all these changes. So we're going to start off up at the front of the 2024 Wrangler because the two big exterior changes are indeed all up here. Now the first one is going to be fairly subtle. I truly didn't notice it until I read about it and went back out and looked at the Jeep in my parking spot, but there's no antenna on the Jeep anymore. They used to have a fixed metal antenna coming out of one of the fenders, which we've seen for decades on a lot of vehicles, and they're slowly going away, but Jeep wanted to get rid of that because they said it was known for catching things off-road, snagging on branches and things, and also it just doesn't look great. And if I had to guess, it affects aerodynamics as well, and they're going for better fuel economy, of course. But they got rid of it. The antenna is embedded in the glass now, so that is what is different with that. Now moving further forward, you'll also notice a different grille up front here. Jeep has kept the 7-slot grille because that's what makes a Jeep, but they have gone for a slightly different design. You'll notice there are slats in between the 7 slats. This is not blocked off anymore. And Jeep has done that to get more cooling, more airflow through the grille to all the radiators going on, because of course they've got several complex drivetrains going on between this 4xe that has a lot of stuff under here, and then the 392, which is a big V8 that they've also shoved in this engine bay. Now, curious to hear if you like it or hate it. Leave a comment below to let me know. I am not a fan, and that is because I think without the paint in between the slats, you lose that 7-slot identity from a distance. It's really hard to see what it is, and it just doesn't look very Jeepy to me. Now, the other changes for 2024 on the Wrangler are all inside. There's a few key differences here. Now, this one being a Willys, it's not going to have one of the key differences, but Jeep did finally add power seats to the Wrangler. That's something that, whether you've known about it or not, they've never offered on a Wrangler because they want these things to go through a lot of water, and you have to think about durability and if you're going to mess up all the electronics. Well, these can go through 34 inches of water at their best equipped, most equipped, and Jeep has designed a power seat that can handle that. Now, two other big things that Jeep has done on the interior. The first, right up here, is side curtain airbags. They've added those. They had to get them as small as they could so that they would fit even when you had the roof off. You wanted that kind of Jeepy feeling. You do have side curtain airbags both on the front and second row of seats in the Wrangler. And then the third thing they've done is change the infotainment. So Stellantis at large, the parent company of Jeep, has updated to the newest version of UConnect, their infotainment software, and this is now UConnect 5. Now, the older Wranglers offered either a 7 or 8-inch touchscreen in the center stack, and it was fine. It was totally functional. I think compared to the Bronco that offers this big, beautiful screen, things were starting to look a little bit dated. So UConnect 5 is snappier processor, snappier software, crisper screens, and in this case, every Wrangler gets a 12.3-inch widescreen touchscreen navigation system. And then moving to the rear of the Wrangler, I want to talk about what's new on the Willys in particular because there's two things that are a big improvement over last year's Willys model, and this applies whether you get the 4xe or any other engine that can power a Wrangler. So first of all, Jeep increased the tire size on the Willys. This comes with all-terrain tires. You can sort of think of it as a light Rubicon, if you will. So last year these came on 32s. This year it comes on 33s. So that will help with just general ground clearance and articulation, that sort of thing. So you've got 33s on here. And then the other thing they did back here with the Willys is with the rear differential. So now for 2024, that rear diff has an electronically controlled locker you control on the dashboard by your 4x4 selector. The only downside, if you want to call it that, is that the ratio of the gearing is going to be different from that of a Rubicon. I mentioned this is kind of a Rubicon Lite, and in this case, it's going to be a 272 to 1 instead of the Rubicon's 4.0 to 1. So it's not going to be quite as short of gearing, so you're not going to have quite as much low speed crawl control sort of stuff built into it. But for most people doing most things, I think it's going to be just fine. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention is with the 4xe, you can tell a 4xe from the tow hooks. You see here we've got these blue tow hooks front and rear, and then the blue on the badging. So more efficiency is always better, of course, but when you use that e-save mode, it's going to run the engine to generate power to store in the battery for later or maintain your state of charge. And in the past, of course, it wouldn't be as efficient as you would like. It adds some drag, and it's going to impact your fuel economy no matter what. So Jeep said they got this thing 50% more efficient when running the engine in e-save mode, which I think is fantastic because, I mean, you're going to use that mode here and there, and 50% is a huge amount of improvement. So first of all, I want to talk about driving the Wrangler 4xe in more of a city environment. Obviously, things are moving right now, but this is right outside of Washington, D.C., and this has been very stop and go as far as traffic is concerned. Now, the 4xe makes a ton of sense in the city. It's a lovely city car, which is something I didn't think I'd be saying necessarily, but I really do get it for a city car. It's a little long with the four doors, but either way, you've got good visibility, and the electric motor with all the torque down low is actually really kind of fun in a city environment. You don't need to go faster than 40 miles an hour in the city, and that's where this really shines if you're driving it on electric only operation. So the car will by default start up in hybrid mode. You can't really change that, but you've got 3 buttons by your left knee for hybrid mode, electric mode, and e-save mode. We'll go back to the e-save in a second, but hybrid mode is going to operate primarily as electric if the vehicle has enough charge. So if you're plugging it in every night at your home or your apartment, it will start off in electric only mode, even though it's set to hybrid. Now, when you call for more acceleration, it will just add the gas engine and it will come on as needed. If you're driving in electric only mode, which is that middle button by your knee, that is going to force the Jeep to stay in electric only operation as long as it can, which is to say until the battery is depleted or until you call for full throttle. Hybrid mode is basically just going to do the same sort of thing, but it'll pull up that gas engine much sooner. So if you're giving it half throttle to get down an on-ramp or something, it's going to bring that online right away. You're not going to have to boot it and hit a kickdown switch to get that extra power from the gas engine. Now, all that to say, I enjoy driving this in hybrid mode for the most part because there are times with on-ramps and things where I just want the power and I don't want to have to fiddle with it or worry about when it's going to come on. As far as how this thing behaves in electric only mode, it's interesting. It's generally really good. The electric motor is, in a space in the transmission bell housing effectively, where it can use all of the gears of the transmission. So that is to say, it feels a little punchier than it really is because it can do that. So it doesn't produce a ton of torque, but you've got multiple gears that it can go through versus just being a single speed. So that does help quite a bit. Now, in traffic, leaving a stop, Jeep says that this is clutched for how it all works, which is, it's I think the same setup for every sort of plug-in hybrid that's got an electric motor in the bell housing. But if you are in traffic and you really boot the throttle away from a stop sign or a stoplight to where you would normally feel the car kind of leapfrog forward, that's where you're going to feel it very rapidly engage that electric motor. And to me, it's a little jarring. It feels like someone driving a stick shift that has just kind of stepped off the clutch a little too abruptly. And that is just an odd feeling. Now, as I'm accelerating here, I've got this in the full electric mode, and it's doing all it can, but this is not quick. I've got my foot in it as close as I can be without the kickdown switch, and we are very glacially accelerating. So, kind of interesting, it just, even with the multiple gears, like I said, it feels really punchy around town. At highway speeds, less so. But benefit is you can put your foot in it, gas engine comes on, and you have plenty of acceleration there. Now you've got 2 gauges here, one on the left for the gas engine regular tachometer, one on the right for the electric motor that is going to show you a kind of percentage of power output versus how much the vehicle is charging the battery. I mentioned for 2024, you've got more regen and more on the e-save as far as how effective and efficient it is. There is a button here near the volume dial on your center stack that gives you basically max regen from lifting off the throttle. So you can have the Jeep feel a little more like a regular gas-only vehicle if you want it to sort of freewheel when you lift off, but where's the fun in that? I would rather have this on max regen all the time, which I've been driving it in that mode, and then when you lift off, you get effectively one pedal driving. And the cool thing with that is it works in both pure electric mode and when this is working as just a hybrid. So even if you've depleted the electric battery and it's down to what it says is less than 1%, it will still let you do one pedal because it is going to recoup energy and stuff it back in the battery, even when operating as a regular Prius type hybrid. Really love that. I'm not using the brake pedal a ton here, which I think is really cool, and you get the bonus of more energy dumped in the battery, so it can help with your economy just a touch. Now, one thing to talk about, especially as I'm slowing down here for this off-ramp, when you go for the brake pedal, there is a definite point at which you feel the transition from regen braking to the actual brakes at the wheels. It can be pretty smooth, and then it can also be pretty... jarring's the wrong word, but you can feel it a lot more sometimes than you can other times, which is obviously just a thing that's going to happen with a lot of vehicles. But I've been using the regen for the most part, and then when I use the brake pedal enough to where it kicks in the actual brakes, it has caught me off guard a little bit just because it feels so different. And then the only other thing to talk about with the 4xe part of this whole Wrangler is in the actual battery itself. So I live in Washington, D.C. It is getting colder. It's December when I'm filming this, and our temperatures lately have been in the low 40s every day. The battery is using a lot of energy to move this thing around. These are heavy Jeeps. They weigh about 800 pounds more than a Wrangler with the 2-liter turbo engine without the 4xe bits added on to it. So you've got a lot of weight for this little battery and little electric motor to propel around. And in the cold, I mean, every battery is going to be less efficient, less effective, and you know, a lot of internal combustion vehicles are going to drop in their efficiency as well, so you'll get fewer miles per gallon. But the battery in this Jeep is so small that, you know, on a perfect day, it's rated at 21 miles of range. The gauge cluster still is being very optimistic. And I mean, I am the eternal optimist, so I love seeing 21 miles of range on this kind of a day, but let me tell you, it's not gonna do it. So just driving, you know, 4 miles from the gym to dinner to my apartment, that used 25% of the range last night. I started at 100%. So, you know, you are going to be charging this often, and the good news is it operates as a regular hybrid really nicely, so it is plenty pleasant to drive as a regular hybrid as well, but the benefit financially is impossible to recognize if you're driving this as a hybrid that you never ever plug in. I know a lot of people are buying these because this can be one of the most cost-effective ways to get into a Wrangler this year, perhaps even in 2024 with the tax laws, everything's changing year to year for how all these things go for rebates. But in any case, these have been a really good way to get into a Jeep, and people are buying them, and if you're not plugging them in, what's the point? You really have to be plugging this thing in and driving it on battery as much as possible for it to make financial sense or really any sense for me to purchase it. Now I'm going to go to the e-save mode here for a minute, because what that does is something that's a little more helpful for city use if you live in a city where they have banned or taxed in some way combustion-powered vehicles within the city limits. I don't think we have anything currently right now in the United States for that, but might happen in the future. I know in Europe some places are flirting with it. So if you're in e-save mode on a highway type situation, kind of like what I am right now, it will use the gas engine as both propulsion for the wheels and as a generator to keep the battery charged up and or charge it up if it's not toward the top of its full charge as it is already. And of course you take a little bit of a hit to your fuel economy doing that because the gas engine is working a little harder, but it will get it charged back up. It's not going to be nearly as effective as plugging it in. So again, you're not going to recognize the financial benefits of this if you're just driving around and hitting e-save thinking, oh, I'm going to have the battery for later and make all that range back. You're not. You need to plug it in. But it is helpful if you want to arrive somewhere and know that you've got some range left in the battery's tank, if you will. So I see the point, sort of, but frankly, this to me is best left just operating as a hybrid because it will do its own thing, and it is all more than happy to shuffle the powertrains around and operate however it thinks is most efficient. Now, the final thing we have to talk about on this Wrangler 4xe in particular is the price, because picking the 4xe adds a lot of money to the sticker. In this case, I built the equivalent Wrangler Willys powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, which is one of your more base options between that and the Pentastar V6. But like for like, down to the color and everything, all the same options, the 4xe is going to be right about $10,000 more expensive for an MSRP, for a sticker price. Now, where this all gets a little easier to handle and tolerate is if you lease this, because there are tax credits that apply solely to leased vehicles right now in the US. Now, that could all change by the time you're watching this. If you watch this 2 years from now, it'll very much all be different. But in the case of this Jeep, if you lease it versus purchase it, you will get $9,000 in incentives applied to your effective purchase price and thus lease rate. So what that means is if you were to lease this 4xe versus lease a gas-powered Willys, equivalent vehicle, spec for spec, the lease payment, 3 years, 10,000 miles a year, 10% down, that's what I did. The lease payment was gonna be $623 a month on the gas-powered vehicle. On the Willys 4xe, it came down to $484. So that's what those incentives do right now. And right now, if you're looking to get in one of these, I think the best option is to lease it and then perhaps buy it out. Now, I am not math smart. I would not take my own financial advice 100%. I would always talk to other people who are smarter than me, but that's just how the numbers shake out on the surface. So talk to some people that you know that are smarter than I am about all this, see if the math works for you, but that is how you can make a 4xe work, because on the surface, with just MSRP versus MSRP, this is gonna be like $10,000 more. And I mean, I like it, but I don't know if it's $10,000 better than a gas-powered Turbo 4. All right, and that is it for this review of the 2024 Jeep Wrangler 4xe in Willys trim. Thank you so much for coming along. As always, be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe right here on YouTube. Follow us on all the other social medias you can find us on, which would be Facebook, Twitter, and X. And head over to outmotorsports.com. We've got a whole bunch of events. We've got a whole membership community we'd love to have you be a part of. And till next time, stay safe, be well. See you for the next one.